A vote for Democrats is a vote to get your children and mine sent to war. I can draw you a straight line between a vote for Kamala Harris and a vote that leads us all into war with lies, and I'm going to do my damnedest to do that right now. The Democrats are the party of war and lies, and I missed it. I'm going to admit to you that I missed it for decades because I was distracted by the culture wars, race, gender, abortion, transgender, and that allowed me to vote for the Obamas and the Clintons and the Bidens, but I will not miss it this time. And if we collectively miss it, it means our children's lives. The Pentagon just announced today that they are sending troops to the Middle East after Israel rained down absolute hell on Lebanon overnight, killing 600 people in a single day, many of them civilians, women, and children. Now, if you think for a second that this war will not involve our children or the war in Ukraine, you are mistaken, sir. They will keep lying to you for this war. And since military enrollment is at an all-time low, they are planning to draft our children. In fact, not just boys. The newest defense budget, which was just announced a few months ago, has a provision to draft women too. I am imploring you to see this. I'm not asking you to support Donald Trump. I will not get distracted today with the personality of Trump. Plus, Republicans are hardly better. Most of them are also lying about this war. I'm asking you to vote against Democrats because they are the loudest liars, leading the charge with the biggest lies. So when you vote this fall, you must ask yourself this question: will we destroy our children's future because we miss the lies that we are told for war? What is the Greek proverb? The first casualty of war is the truth.
Right.
Well, we've been doing that for decades now. So let's just go through it. I've chosen a few wars that we've been lied to, and I'm asking you now to see this as a thread, right? So a war for every generation based on a lie, except now our generation currently has two. So here are just a few that I'd like to talk about today. And I think that only a foolish person would say, yes, all of these operations were based on lies, but the ones we've got now are true. Who would say that, right? That's folly. We know that the government lied about Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan. They also lied about Panama, Syria, Iran, Kosovo, Somalia, Yemen, Egypt. They are currently lying about Russia and Israel. So you can't believe that it's all been a lie up until now. You just simply can't believe that. So let's get started. I think most of us understand that the Bushes were war criminals. They sold us lies about weapons of mass destruction, Iraqi soldiers throwing babies from incubators. That little beauty, came from a New York City PR firm. And we turned Saddam Hussein, who had been a partner of the CIA, into a monster, of course, because we wanted a war. Well, guess who else was an asset of the CIA? Noriega from Panama. Did you know that? But despite that relationship, we bombed the holy hell out of Panama City in 1989 to overturn a government that was only considering not doing the business with the United States. In fact, the first Bush launched the largest airborne assault on a city since World War II. It was called Operation Just Cause, and it was an unprovoked attack on civilians. The death toll has never been accurately counted because the U.S. Army did not let the press or the Red Cross in. The U.S. never faced major consequences for that. Then came the Clinton administration. He backed the Mujahideen in Bosnia in order to fight Russian-aligned Serbs before he sent in NATO. This was NATO's first major operation. They called it Operation Allied Force. It was based on the lie that the Serbs had been exterminating ethnic Albanians. Instead, though, it was our guys who killed civilians. In fact, at least 9 bombing attacks hit civilian areas, and NATO used cluster bombs in Belgrade. We're supposed to have since outlawed those cluster bombs, right, Clayton? But we are using them still.
Oh yeah, we're supposed to have outlawed them. They're supposed to be something we've taken off the table. Also, what is it? Depleted uranium shells. Those are supposed to also be taken off the table. But when NATO wants to use them to carry out attacks, right, NATO gets away with using depleted uranium.
Yes. Okay. So that's next in this thread. After Clinton came Bush Jr. He launched the war in Afghanistan. I think we can all agree. Does anyone think that was a good idea? Anyone still here? Bueller? Bueller. In fact, former CIA analyst and friend of the show, Michael Scheuer, he points out in his excellent book that the Bush administration knew damn well that it would be a lost cause to go into Afghanistan because the CIA had helped the Mujahideen oust the Soviets, but we didn't use any of that intelligence when Bush decided he wanted a war with Afghanistan. We just winged it and sent Americans to their deaths. Then came the Obama years. Now, sure, Obama was the coolest, right? He was the coolest in American history, but also one of the bloodiest. Did you know on his third day in office, Obama ordered a strike in Pakistan that killed 20 civilians? But hey, that was okay. You know why? Because they had a good spin on it, according to the New York Times. Every time the Obama administration killed a civilian, they would label them as combatant as long as they were military-age males, unless there was explicit intelligence proving that they were innocent. Notice how the Times here calls this a disputed method. Like, well, I mean, think of that as your son. Your son gets killed by a foreign actor that's invading your country, but because he was a teenager, they thought he could have been a terrorist. It counts. Put him on the list. Check. Well, obviously that's wrong. We should all know that. And a lot of times they went and killed civilians anyway, as was reported by Chelsea Manning.
Can you just wrap your head around the hypocrisy for a moment, right? That's what the Obama administration labeled them as. So military-age men, enemy combatants who are fighting our people, et cetera, right?
Yeah.
The United States has a wide open southern border where tens of thousands of illegal immigrants have poured across the southern border, and many of them are on the terrorist watch list in the United States. They're actively allowing them to do that, but they won't put a stop to that.
Right.
It's a nice hypocrisy on the part of the Biden administration.
Well, I mean, we see people like tofu. You're bad or good based on whatever you put it in. It's a good stew or a bad stew, right? Okay. Again, Chelsea Manning's biography, Bradley Manning, tells us that he many times provided his combat units intelligence showing this place has civilians now. There's no longer a target there, and they would go and bomb it anyway. The only person ever punished for those war crimes was Julian Assange. You know this. Now, while Obama continued the war in Afghanistan, he was both fighting al-Qaeda in Afghanistan and arming the same group in Syria. The al-Qaeda affiliate in Syria is called al-Nusra. Obama armed them in order to overthrow Assad based on lies about the Assad, they call it the regime. How did he get away with that? He came up with this brilliant spin about calling them moderates. They were not moderates. They were al-Qaeda. So that was just PR spin to sell you war.
And we destroyed that country. Syria, of course, one of the most peaceful countries in the world. And we can't have them being independent and all. So once we want to manufacture a story, we destroy their country. And then we wonder why we have Syrian refugees in the United States.
Right.
Because we destroyed their country. Syrians don't want to live in the United States.
Worth noting, we are currently illegally occupying Syria.
Right.
Even though Kamala Harris lied and said there are no troops in combat zones, Syria doesn't want us there. It's an illegal occupation. Why Obama wanted a war so badly on Syria is part of a long story about Syria that the U.S. has waged since the 60s. Actually, it's not about oil. It's about disrupting Arab collaboration that would harm U.S. financial interests. On that, I refer you to this excellent book. Now, the Obama years also devastated Libya because Hillary Clinton, as Secretary of State, wanted President Obama to wage that war for her. She had been embarrassed by the Arab Spring in Egypt, so she said she's going to change all that in time to run for president. She literally said, I will change that by going after Muammar Gaddafi, who, you guessed it, had been an ally of the CIA during the Bush War in Iraq. Now, Obama launched Operation Odyssey Down, and he lied to the American people for Clinton. He said that Gaddafi was planning a Rwanda-style genocide for 700,000 men, women, and children. They claimed that Gaddafi was bombing peaceful protests, and they spread a strange rumor, that the soldiers were on Viagra in order to do all the raping. All of these were lies. And who did we arm to fight in Libya? Of course, al-Qaeda trained soldiers. But again, we called them moderates, and then we went and used NATO to help us out, killing thousands of civilians in Libya, not to mention destroying an economy and a country that was on its way to prosperity before Hillary Clinton set her sights on it. Now we move into the Trump years. Trump did escalate the wars in Somalia. He launched, in fact, more drone strikes on Somalia than Bush and Obama combined. But he did reportedly ask his staff in 2017, can't we just pull out of there? Because he does, in fact, seem to be against foreign wars. He's the only one who will give lip service to that. And it was Secretary of Defense General Mattis who said, actually, no, we can't pull out of there. So the drone strikes increased. In fact, yes, on civilians, including, we've reported this horrific story, a mother and who was carrying her 4-year-old son. Do you recall this? The Pentagon said, well, we had newbies on the job. It kind of was a software problem. We shouldn't have done it. But this was a mom, you guys, carrying her baby. And now we come to the Biden-Harris administration. So now that I've painted this picture for you of all the war that we've been sold lies, do you for a second think that the Biden administration is the only ones telling the truth now, finally? How could somebody think that? I think that I've proven to you every week for the last 2 years on this show, they are lying to us about Ukraine. This was not Putin's unprovoked attack. Once again, we are arming the bad guys. We arm them just like we arm al-Nusra and Hamas. You got to think, though, that Zelensky will soon turn into, for us, a Gaddafi or a Noriega or a Saddam, right? If I were him, I would be smart about that. I would be thinking, well, when does the U.S. turn on me? Because the enemy of our enemy usually becomes our enemy when we need them to be. So if Zelensky were a thinking man, which I'm not sure he is, then he'd be worried about this. And now, this week, we are sending more troops to defend Israel, even though Israel is killing civilians, even though Netanyahu now has dictator power, faces opposition from the Israelis he purports to support. He doesn't. He doesn't care about them. Even though Israel hides its nuclear weapons program, even though Israel has for decades used rape as torture on prisoners, even though Israel interferes in our elections quite openly, and we fund Hamas to keep this warfare with Israel going. So they lie about our presence in Israel and Ukraine, and they lie about our reasons for being in both places. And Kamala Harris, you guys, started the lies about Russia when she went to Ukraine in 2022, just before the conflict started. So if she is willing to lie about this, she does not want the war to end. And if you vote for her, you must not either. No Democrats want the war to end. And truth be told, most Republicans don't either. They don't tell the truth about these. And this became really clear to me during the campaigns when, if the Republicans wanted to defeat Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, why didn't they tell the truth about all their war crimes? Instead, they argued about race and gender and abortion and religion and gay marriage. And why? Right? Because they're part of a uniparty. They both want war. But if you study, you guys, if you see through the war machine propaganda, you'll start to see the matrix. And when you see the matrix, you start to hear who's telling the truth about lies and about war and who's not. President Trump, yes, is protecting Israel, but he has said he will broker peace with Russia. He did oppose aid to Israel in the COVID relief packages, and he does speak out against foreign wars. Do I know he will de-escalate? Absolutely no, I don't. But his is the smallest war drum that we currently have on the debate stage. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. But, as people point in the chat out here, people are like, well, Trump said make Israel great again.
Yes.
So a lot of people here are not fans of Trump's sort of doublespeak on this. And it's
I'm not either. I'm with you. I don't like to hear it.
And also, to surround yourself with the people like Mike Pompeo and these warmongers. This is exactly what Colonel Douglas McGregor, who served under President Trump, has said. And what his biggest concern is that President Trump, in the first time around, surrounded himself with these deep state swamp rats. And then now Trump in interviews has said, I didn't know better. Now I know who these people are. I'm not going to let it happen again. But then Mike Pompeo was there swirling around again. He's speaking at CPAC and he's hanging around the Trump people again.
Right.
And so they want to end a war in Ukraine, but they're fine to send American troops into the Middle East. I think it's very important, especially if people, our viewers, are Christian. and you hear this, like Tucker had a great interview with the author of Mere Christendom, the pastor, and he said, it's very, very, as a Christian, people should never like idolizing politicians, like holding them up as like some sort of religious figure, right? And that's what a lot of people do. And these people, just watch their actions, people. Just pay attention to what they're saying and then watch what their actions are. And if their actions back it up, great. If Trump says, we're getting out of the Middle East, great. I'll say hallelujah. But right now, he's got these swamp rats swirling around once again. That's really scary.
Right. Vivek Ramaswamy, RFK Jr. have both told the truth about the war in Ukraine. They have problematic, in my views on Israel. JD Vance.
They all do.
Yes. Yeah. We don't have a vote on Israel. This is true.
Maybe the only like politician telling the truth about it is like Thomas Massey. I mean, there's so few, but so many of them. They'll like, get out of Ukraine. But Israel. It's like it's this weird sort of doublespeak on front of these people. And like someone in the chat's like, Redacted hates Israel. Get your head out of your ass. No, we don't. I love Israelis. I have a lot of Israeli friends. We can't stand Benjamin Netanyahu, who's a warmonger. And you can absolutely dislike the administration and government of a country like we do. Love the United States of America. Hate the Biden administration, hate our current government, hate the warmongers that are killing people. So you can actually have different feelings about that. I know that's shocking to some people.
Sure. I think it's also worth pointing out JD Vance, should he then eventually become the president, he wants a war with Iran. That's problematic. We can look into that another day. My point is that the Democrats want all wars. They vomit out all lies. They speak no truths. And that, to me, is the only way I can vote this November is against these warmongers. Trans rights, abortion rights, race theory, none of that will matter if the Democrats continue their war. It's about less about that and more about who will drag my child into war. And I have boys and girls. The government wants them both. And I will fight back to the death for my children not to be dragged into these wars based on lies. So I ask you, when you go to the voting polls, will we destroy our future and our children's future because we miss the lies for the culture wars like I once did? Now, again, American troops are being deployed this week. Will we let that happen based on government propaganda? I came across this post on X today, and it was so moving that I thought I'd read it to you, because this is how history will judge us, you guys. This comes from a combat veteran, username Noctis Draven, and he posted this video. I'd like to play it for you without sound and read to you what he wrote. He says, "This was me on my profile landing page is a small video of myself in Iraq. I was one of the few soldiers who managed to sneak a camera into the combat zones, and I have 20 hours of footage the world has never seen. I will never show it. Maybe when I die, I will release it. However, this is an example of what our time in Iraq was. We as civilians and coalition forces invaded a land and a people under false pretenses that were for weapons of mass destruction that were never found, and dangers to America that did not exist. There's a famous quote that says, 'History is written by the victors.' That's what the West has tried to deliver to the world. The truth is, America and coalition forces were the bad guys. We're not the good guys. And what did we accomplish in 20-year invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan? We killed over 1 million people and secured power for Israel, along with losing over 7,000 American lives and leaving countless Americans permanently disabled. I will not hold back the truth, because now our American government seeks the same thing. They seek to send Americans into war for Israel and regional power, but the soldiers will be told it's to defend America. And it's not, you guys. It absolutely is not. Now, he followed up with this tweet, which I would also like you to see for yourself. He says, Americans have been in a constant state of war since our founding. My saying is a war for each generation. Sadly, a truth. Each generation of America is brainwashed and indoctrinated into a war of some kind. It's a wonder how the rest of the world gets along and has existed without constant war. But America, a land not even 300 years old, has a war for every generation. How many times do we have to do this dance before you realize the song is on repeat? So I ask you, as you go to the polls, how will you vote knowing that the people in power continue to lie to get their war and destruction and death? That's what I'd like you to chew on, because it's kept me up all night, you guys. This, especially on this news of more Americans going into the Middle East. I honestly can't sleep, and I want us together to see this as a string of lies and say, no more.